Hey everyone, Hakase here. I am back and I couldn't resist making some more WoW content with all the recent changes that have been happening in Shadowlands and stuff. And what better place to get started than the thing that's nearest and dearest to my heart, which is the warlock class. Over the years, all the changes to the class have made it almost unrecognizable when compared to the state of warlock back when I started playing it in Wrath. And what keeps me going mostly with playing the class are really those memories of how it used to be. Back then, the class felt very unique to me in terms of its playstyle, and in the fact that you had to work very hard to get damage out, but you were rewarded for it if you did it well. And although the specs do still feel quite unique, I would argue that they achieved this by feeling a little bit mechanically broken. And I think we can really do better than that. So I just wanted to share some ideas for changes that I feel would move the warlock towards a better place, at least in my subjective opinion. And the spec I really want to start with is Affliction. And just a side note, I didn't want this video to be like a rant or just me talking about the things I don't like about the warlock. I wanted to, as much as possible, make suggestions of what could make it better, as well as give reasons for why things are the way they are. So I'm gonna play some footage of a dungeon I recently did on beta, so you guys don't get bored of seeing just my face. But please don't judge it too harshly, as I just got on the beta and this is one of the first dungeons I did and I really had no chance to practice the new Affliction spec. But anyway, let's get into the issues and suggestions. So the first item on the list, and the most important one for me, and the biggest step back from what I feel the Affliction warlock should be like, is the fact that dots don't feel strong or impactful. And as one of my guildmates put it, dots are just combo points. So to illustrate this issue, I would like to show you a damage breakdown of hitting some dummies. At first here we have the breakdown of a single target build on one dummy. Then I tried a bunch of builds on 2 targets, and here's the breakdown for the most sane version of that. Then I did the test with 3 dummies, and just for interest, I did 2 iterations of this. One where I kept up the dots as much as possible and never let at least Agony drop, and another test where I let Agony drop every single time except for when it was within the Dark Glare cooldown phase. So obviously this isn't a very scientific test because I just hit the dummies for a random amount of time, and I don't think we should take single-digit % numbers to mean a lot of things, but this is just to paint kind of an overall picture of where the spec stands. And we can clearly see that Malefic Rapture is the bulk of our damage, regardless of whether we're hitting a single target or multiple targets. And the damage breakdown of our dots does really look more like a combo point builder breakdown for some other classes. And yeah, I just said let's not look at the individual percentages, but look at that Agony damage difference between keeping it up on 3 targets and never letting it drop, and letting it drop every single time and restack. There's just a 0.7% difference in my test. And again, it's not about the exact numbers, but it's more about the picture that this paints, and you can see that not letting Agony drop doesn't make a huge difference, and this absolutely blows my mind. First point here is the fact that the application of dots is extremely tedious for what they do. When you look at a multi-target situation, if we're to look at dots as combo points, we have to build combo points individually on each target to then be able to use them. And since there isn't a huge difference between keeping them up perfectly and sometimes letting them drop, their low durations end up making the whole mechanic feel unrewarding. And if it's unrewarding, it may as well be punishing because you gotta do it. For example, Corruption only lasts 14 seconds, Siphon Life lasts 15 seconds, and Agony lasts 18 seconds. These are really short durations considering we need to have them up on all targets to be able to do damage. So another reason this feels bad is that Malefic Rapture ends up being a spender for 2 builders, your dots and your shards. So this is why the spec feels so slow to get started on any pack or pull. As we already spoke about, the Agony damage being low makes keeping up Agony stacks not feel very important, and this really kind of breaks one of the core designs of the spec for me. So my suggestion here is to significantly tune up dot damage, and while this is an obvious suggestion with obvious drawbacks, the accompanying changes that I would suggest are key to keeping it balanced. The first of these is to make Malefic Rapture only explode off of corruptions, but hit all surrounding targets, similar to an Unholy Death Knight's dot. And it should also scale with Mastery, which will come into play later. This way, your open on your pack would be Seed of Corruption, Burst the Seed, and then Malefic Rapture. It would still not be quite instant, but it would feel a lot better than putting Agonies up on every mob. A side benefit of this change would be that dots being more impactful would make the second row of our talents more impactful. Now, because of the proposed change to Malefic Rapture, it would no longer be our single target spender, and to be honest, I don't know if anyone ever liked it as a single target spender. I certainly didn't. So in that regard, I would propose the reintroduction of Soul Burn or something similar to it. And the idea here is to make it cost shards and empower your Drain Soul or Shadow Bolts. my proposition would be something like a 3 shard cost instead of 1, so you don't have to constantly spam it, and make it significantly empower your next Drain Soul, or let's say 3 Shadow Bolt casts. Okay, so let's get into the second point, and this one is also about dots, and it's about the nonsensical situation where we end up using a larger number of dots in single target situations than we do in multi-dot situations. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. In my opinion, the reason dots are fun, and the reason people are attracted to the dot playstyle, is that a dot is something you can put up on a target and then step away from that target and forget about that target, and you know the dot is sticking on that target and it's doing damage. I don't think anyone plays a dot class so that they can maintain dots on a single target. And so the idea of reducing the impact of dots on spread out targets, which is exactly the situation where dots are applicable, is kind of ridiculous to me. Right now, because of so many mechanics of the spec that are not really related to dots, and because of the low dot duration, it becomes impractical to try and maintain multiple dots, and if you try to do that, it's counterproductive because you're gonna do less damage. I believe council fights are the ones that dot classes should look most forward to, and right now it's just not the case with Affliction. So let's get into our third point, and that's the fact that cooldowns and some of our more important talents do not really feel impactful. So most of the tools that we have to work with just make us do more of what we already do, and that is just not fun. So for example, Dark Glare, very notably, doesn't do very much damage at all in Shadowlands, and all it does is pretty much extend the duration of your dots, which doesn't feel very impactful. Creeping Death makes your dots tick faster, and again, doesn't really make you feel a lot more powerful, and it's also confusing when it comes to picking Creeping Death over Dark Soul. Soul Conduit, again, just lets you do more of what you already do, which is just use more shards. It doesn't make your spenders more powerful. So my suggestion here is to make Dark Soul give mastery instead of haste, and so it will scale with the before mentioned Malefic Rapture changes, which scale with mastery now. So that will be your go-to target for cleave scenarios, and tune Creeping Death so that it is your go-to in multi-dot scenarios. Okay, so let's get into the last 2 points, and these are kind of minor, so we should get them out of the way pretty quickly. So the fourth point, and again, it kind of shows that the spec is a little bit broken, is that we have too many spenders, and they're all AoE spenders. We have Malefic Rapture, which is an AoE spender, we have Seed of Corruption, which is an AoE spender, and we have Vile Taint, which is an AoE spender. We don't have any single target spenders, and it just feels kind of bad. I don't think Seed of Corruption needs to cost a shard. I think it should just be scaled so that it doesn't need to cost a shard, and so it's only used for applying corruption. Also, Vile Taint costing a shard feels bad because it interferes with your AoE spender. But anyway, my previously suggested changes of creating a single target spender also kind of helped this point a bit, I think. So my last point here, and the one that I've been probably brooding on for the longest time, is the fact that summoning demons doesn't really make much sense for Affliction and Destruction. Demons are not tied into your toolkit in any way, and I get it, you're a warlock, you're whatever, a dark summoner, and you know, demons have historically been part of the identity of the warlock class, but I don't think they're part of the identity of the Affliction and Destruction specs, and so I don't see the incessant necessity to keep demons there for these specs. And an accompanying thing here is the fact that your interrupt is tied to a particular demon, and this feels kind of bad, and I would suggest to put the interrupt spell on the caster, similar to when you have sacrificed your demon, and this would also help the demonology problem of not having an interrupt. In fact, a point that ties into this is that the sacrifice talent ends up never being taken, and I think the change here could be to switch that talent from sacrificing your demon to instead enable you to summon a demon. You know, for people who want to play with a demon, or for heavy movement situations. So anyway, that's all of the constructive criticism that I currently have for the Affliction Warlock, and I'm also thinking about making similar videos about Destruction and Demonology, but obviously over there I think I'd have a lot less to say. But yeah, I'm planning to make more videos about the pre-patch and Shadowlands beta and Shadowlands when it comes out, so do stay tuned if you're interested. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.